when everyone says it's all love and light, that's not the story that I've had.
Your intuition is your connection to all of reality, to source, to God, whatever you want to call it.
You are standing in your truth that is the conscious truth, that is source's truth. The more you are in that truth, there's nothing that can happen to you.
I have come across people who have, in fact, one of our lead investigators was a victim of demonic possession.
Like Jeffrey Epstein, he was killed. You know, I can tell you he really wasn't killed. For someone to tell me that the cameras went off, didn't happen.
When we release the attachment to being the victim, that things are happening to us rather than we are co-creators and in collaboration with something greater than us, everything is possible.
Welcome to the podcast where the unknown connects with the empowered. This is Unexplained Incorporated. We've been making true believers since 2020 and counting. Here is your host, Phantom Phil.
Yes, true believers, welcome back to the show where the unknown connects with the empowered. And of course, I'm your host, Phantom Phil. And just before we introduce this week's guest, which is very special for this early July edition of the show, I just want to remind everyone the best way to connect with me is through unexplainedinc.com, the show's website. You can get every download of every audio episode that is available in the show's history, links to my social media. Instagram is the most active, various blogs and other things. And I'm going to be doing a bit of a revamp on the site, I think, later in the summer as well. And also, if you like the video side of things, I am on Rumble, Unexplained Inc. Subscribe, give it a follow. It's starting to gain more and more traction, so you get the audio and the visual experience, which is the best way, however you want to choose, to experience the show. Well, right now, this is airing between Canada's birthday and the birthday of the United States, early July. It's always an incredible time for many and a very great time to reminisce about the path forward. It's also like the halfway point of the year as well. And I feel I'm bringing on a guest for the very first time who's going to open a lot of minds and a lot of hearts and maybe even open a lot of doors for people. And I'm very excited to have him on. I'm going to give you a brief introduction, and then he's going to take over the rest and have us go into his story, which is where I always start with first-time guests. So this gentleman is named Jeremy Chenvert. He's a U.S. Army veteran, former U.S. Army veteran with 8 years of service. He is the host of the Shaman Stories podcast. He is also behind PNW Shamanic Healing, as he is in the American Pacific Northwest. Struggling with PTSD led him to do trainings in Peru and South America, which I cannot wait to get into as well. And he will tell us the rest of the story right now. Jeremy, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time during this crazy heat wave to kick off summer 2026. And however true believers want to enjoy this one, I hope they're staying cool while doing it. So Jeremy, where do you want to pick up the story from there?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing me on and everything. And I don't know, but where I'm at, there's not a heat wave right now. It's about a nice 55 degrees. So even in Washington State, we don't really get too much of a summer here. It's a couple weeks and then that's about it. But yeah, like you mentioned, I was in the Army. I did 8 years. Within that 8 years, I did 3 deployments, twice to Iraq, once to Afghanistan. My wife and I did the math, and I think for the entire time I was actually in, I was only home for maybe like 3 years, with all the training, basic training, AIT, all that good stuff. I was probably home for about 3. And I would say I was one of those guys who didn't feel he had any problems when he came back. For me, it was each deployment, it was a little bit worse, a little bit more aggravation, a little bit more anger, a little bit more not liking loud noises, being in crowds. And I just kind of just tuck that off as that's just my personality now. I'm getting older. It just is what it is. I don't like going to clubs anymore. I don't really drink anymore. It's just what it is, right? But it crescendoed to the point where one day after I got out, My wife and I were arguing over something stupid, and I just got so angry that I just wanted to hit something, and I didn't want to hit her, right? And, that's obviously a no-go for everyone. And I just turned around and I just punched a hole right through the wall. And I was like, I'm done. I can't take this anymore. And she's sitting there crying. My first son at the time, he was probably like a year and a half, 2 years old. He's crying. I'm yelling, not knowing what the hell's going on. And finally I was like, I need to get help, right? So I did the traditional way. I went to go to the VA, told them what was going on. They gave me some pills, said, take these. We have at the time there was no online presence, right? Today everything's online. This is 2012. So there was no, hey, have a telehealth call and do these programs online. It was, yeah, we can do something on a Tuesday at 1:00. Well, I just got out of the military. I just started a job. I'm on probation. I don't have any leave saved up. I can't just leave for the day and not get paid for it, right? So it was like, that's just not an option. And then I eventually talked to a therapist who was just like, yeah, if you smoke a little bit of weed each day, that'll help regulate your neurons and everything will be fine. And I was like, fuck it, I'll try it. I got my medical card license for marijuana here in Washington State back at that time. And then I was just smoking weed every night, thought I had everything under control. I started drinking. The pills really got me numb. And it was just like one of those, when I did explode, it was 10 times worse than anything that could have been before. And so I just stopped doing the pills. I was like, you know what? I'm done with those. I still want to feel something. I just keep smoking weed and drinking. That seems to be working. I'm functional. I'm not going to work drunk or high. I'm getting my job done. But I wasn't living my life. I wasn't doing things with my kids. I wasn't doing things with my wife. It was just this robotic, I'm just here present, getting stuff done. And it just wasn't where I wanted to be with life, but I didn't know any other way. And it wasn't until, I'd say, God, it's been so long now, like 2017, 18, it got to the crescendo with my wife and I, where she's basically going to divorce me. At that time, we had a second kid. She was going to take both kids away. I needed to do something. And shamanism, this type of belief system, it's not even a belief system, it's more of a way of life, but it was never on my bingo card. I didn't grow up with any of this stuff. I didn't grow up with religion. I was very agnostic, very logical, very in my head. But shamanism kept showing up to me, like Amazon book reviews to read, like recommended books. All of a sudden, books about shamanism were showing up in my feed. Classes on shamanism were showing up in my social media. It just kept coming and coming. And finally, I was like, let's see what this is, right? I don't know. And I got a book by a guy named Paul Francis. He runs the Three Ravens College out in England. Teaches people how to do basic journey work, some deeper journey work and stuff, but really great guy, really good school. If you're looking to just get started, I always recommend him. That's where I started. And it wasn't until then that I started doing the journey work, meeting my guides. I started bringing back parts of myself that were lost, understanding the deeper meaning behind my life and things that I needed to do. And it just became more clear that this was something that I can do, and it's easy and it's not hard. It's literally just put on a drum track, set your intention on what you want to do, and you just go take a journey and you start getting healing. And it's like, what is this? Right. And then at that point I became a Reiki master, because I was like, well, let's work with energies. Let's figure it out. Reiki's kind of like the gateway drug to a lot of this stuff. And then I still felt like there was something more missing, right? It's like, there's got to be a way to get deeper.
Yeah.
Before
you get into that, I just want to stop you there briefly, because there was a lot of ground you covered there.
Oh, yeah.
One thing I want to ask, though, before you continue is, I've had various interactions with my algorithm over the years that have been very important. And look, we all know the algorithms are heavily manipulated. You know, they're data mining us like crazy. However, once in a while, things will break through like that appear almost randomly, but you were meant to see them. Yeah. Back in summer of 2013, I worked a highly stressful job late into the night. And when I got home, the family was asleep, and I started finding modes of relaxation on YouTube to help me come down and get to sleep in the middle of the night after this stressful job. And then I find this Reiki demonstration video in my feed, and I'm like, what is this? This looks interesting. Anyway, a couple months later, I finally go in for a session. My whole life changes, like, from that moment. So I have this kind of belief, and it's based on repeated experience, that spirit will, at times, when we're in a mode of surrender and we're ready for certain steps, it'll hack our algorithms to show us what we need. Do you think that's what happened with you when you started seeing all this shamanism stuff pop up online, like, out of the blue?
Oh, yeah. It was spirit just smacking me in the head going, look, dummy, do this.
Yeah. Okay, good. We're on the same page there then.
I mean, I can take it a one step further, right? Because in shamanism, we, obviously we believe animals and plants can communicate us and teach us. Well, so can the rock kingdom, the stone people. And if you think about it, all of our technology is made from minerals.
Yeah.
And so the minerals do have a connection with the stone people. And so I do believe there is a way for them to get through to us. And, we see that a little bit in AI. We see that in other technology. I do think there can be a way for them to reach us that way. Now, is it also manipulated by man and evil corporations and all that other good stuff? Yeah, of course. But I do believe they can get in that way and communicate with us.
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to that a little bit later on. You brought up something very important there. However, at this moment, I'd like you to continue the rest of your story and eventually what brought you to your trainings and to South America and all that.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, I did Reiki, I was doing journey work, but I felt there was something more, because even in my journeys, I'm like, all right, well, how can I started working on my wife and my kids, just practicing, and it's like, how do I manipulate energy? How do I do this? How can I would see like these stuck imprints within people's energetics fields when I was working on them. I was like, well, how do I clear this? How do I work on that? And so it just kept diving deeper and deeper. And I eventually, one of my friends came over one day and was like, oh, I just did this ayahuasca experience, and they're in the next town over, and there's a really cool couple. They were trained with these people in South America, da-da-da-da-da, you should try it. And I'm like, all right, I don't know, but let's give it a shot. And so I did ayahuasca, and that completely shifted my thinking on everything too. And it was like, because I even asked, I was like, well, what does shamanism mean for me? And during that experience, I was basically in this room with this big giant map of the earth. And on the map, it had all these fires, like not like campfires, all these campfires. And there was all these, like, each campfire had people dancing and drumming around the fire. And then I saw like a wind go through of like the passage of time, and it just blew everything out. And then it was like the sparks were reigniting and becoming all these fires. So it's like shamanism, or this type of modality, is becoming more prevalent around the world, and it's coming back to us, and we're remembering who we are and what we were able to do. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I guess that kind of, for me, it validated that I was on the right path, right? It still wasn't about making a business or trying to help other people. It was really just me trying to understand what I needed for myself, right? Because I think that's the true, anybody who goes into this work, it should be about you first before trying to make money and make a business and all this other nonsense. It's, if you don't work on yourself first, you're useless to anybody else.
Yeah. For sure.
It's just how it should be. And from there, I was talking with my facilitator, and she was holding up the book for The Four Winds with Alberto Villoldo.
I think it's Villardo, I believe, but I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I always say his name wrong, and I feel bad for that. And she's reading his book, and I was like, oh, I read his book. I'd really love to take his courses, but he's so expensive. And she's like, you just need to ask for a scholarship. They give out scholarships. And I was like, okay, that's not on the website, but I'll give it a shot. I literally went home that Sunday, filled out the paperwork on a Monday, got into the next class on a Wednesday. And it was exactly what I could do and everything. And so then I started working at that level. And that's when I started learning about what those imprints are, what those soul pieces are, bringing back parts of people's self and clearing out entities. But they don't train. Their version of entity is very light. Like it's not like demonic forces and possessions and stuff like that. They kind of just say, oh yeah, these things come in and you just take them out and it's no big deal. That doesn't always work the way they teach it. And so I did all the training, and then I was working on people. Like I would have them come up and just kind of do donation based, and people would come over. The day I officially made a business, I had a client come over and she's like, yeah, my psychic medium told me I have a demon inside me and I need a shaman to do an exorcism. And I'm sitting there going, okay, sure. We'll see what's there. Come on over, whatever. And I'm checking her and I'm like, yeah, you have an entity, but it's not going to be a big deal. I didn't know anything about the darker side of these things at this time. And I start my process of clearing her, and she literally just dropped to her knees, started yelling at me in a deeper voice, telling me that it wasn't fucking leaving and there was nothing I could do. So, am I okay to cuss on here? I should.
Oh, absolutely. First. Yeah, okay. You're good. You're good, man.
And it just started cussing me out, and I'm talking like a 5'2" woman, like very skinny, just dropped to her knees, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I start clearing, I clear, and I got it out, and I'm working on her some more, and she's like coughing up like smoke, and I'm clearing her, and she leaves, and she's like crying because it's over and feels great. And I'm like, all right, I need to get deeper now because there's something more here than even I was trained with. Sure. And I started looking around and talking to some of the people I went to school with, and they're like, yeah, there's this other shaman in South Africa. His name's Obi. Go talk to him. I reached out to Obi, told him my story, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to teach you. So then he started teaching me how to deal with the darker stuff. And we're talking like giant shapeshifters, lesser demons. There's one that we call the M because we don't want to give it a name, but we think it's almost like an embodiment of the consciousness right now. Like it's really prevalent and it's really hard to get out, and only a few people can like track it. But these things get in you and cause problems. And I worked with him for a little while, and actually even started teaching at his school, teaching other people how to extract these things. And then from there, I started getting into quantum alchemy and star magic, and now it's all about like reprogramming people's codes. And like what was it? About 2 weeks ago, I fixed a lady's bulging disc that she's been seeing a doctor for years, and it was just realigning her spine energetically, and then she was able to move forward. But that's the high level version of the journey.
Where do you feel like you're at right now? Because I find just on my own journey and many other people I've talked to, when you think you maybe reached the end of one door, the hallway goes deeper or an unexpected door opens up. And are you able to kind of in your own way foresee where this might take you, or are you just surrendering to the surprise of it all at this point?
I'm just surrendering at this point. Like it's like I said, I mentioned Star Magic earlier. I actually interviewed Jerry Sargent just the other week, and it's online, but he's the founder of Star Magic, and his story is even crazier. Like he was doing the stuff with the mafia and all this other stuff, and then got downloads. But his technique was what was that I learned that let me realign a spine, and I'm like, you can do this like energetically, like. The person's spine's no longer crooked anymore, and they don't have to touch them. Like all these things are possible, and it's every day I learn something new, and it just keeps blowing my mind more. Where it's like, is this actually real?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm in the same boat with you. I'm going to take just a quick second to share parts of my story with you, because I know you'll probably find common ground with it. I got into Reiki. Like I said, that led me down a whole rabbit hole of spirituality and even like the fake spirituality we kind of get caught up in. And then I hit like a pretty significant valley in my life and my development. And I started to just kind of go, is this all there is? Like, I came so far in a short period of time, but now it's like I'm stuck here. This doesn't feel right at all. And there was this faithful day in March of 2019 when I was literally meeting a good friend of mine for dinner who lives just over an hour away from me. And I had a whole lineup of things happen that day that put me way ahead of schedule. So I decided I'm going to stop at a mall that's fairly close to where we're meeting up to eat later on, and I'm going to look at some books. And I'm at a major book retailer, and I find this beautiful book almost like jumping out at me that I had never seen before. This amazing cover, and it was called The Art of Heart Navigation by Jeff D. Nixa. And Jeff Nixa's background, he worked in law, became a hospice chaplain, and then became this term, I don't know if he coined it or not, but it was an urban shaman. And he was basically getting help from the non-physical to help people get unstuck in the physical. And he had like a cabin in the American Northwest and stuff. I don't know if he still is practicing or around or not, but like his book, which I wasn't supposed to find in a store I wasn't supposed to be in at that certain point in time, like changed my life even further. And at the end of that book, it said, maybe there's a practitioner in your area. And then the light bulb went off and I'm like, I haven't even looked at this. There probably is. And I kid you not, Jeremy, I found a practitioner who literally lived like 10 minutes up the road from that mall. And she would end up closing up her business during COVID because I started to see her in summer of 2019. And then by summer of 2020, she was like, no, I'm out. And I think she was cool. She was nice, but I think she treated it like a side hustle. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a path. It wasn't a way of life, like you said, but she was helpful and she kind of got my toes in the water. And then through a bunch of other various synchronicities, I find my main teacher and mentor who is offering things in person during lockdown to small groups. And it's less than a 20-minute drive from where I live. And then the rest from there is history. So it's just, you and I are both providing examples of how the path will usually open up for you if you just allow it and don't get in your own way.
Oh, yeah. I see this a lot when people do like sigil magic or any other kind of ritual magic, where it's like, oh, I want to get the money so I can do this X, Y, or Z. Oh, I just need money to do this. So everybody does money magic.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is the end goal you're trying to get? That's the true desire. Is it the trip to Italy? That's usually the example I always give. It's like, you want to go to Italy. Cool. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about how you're going to get there. Focus on Italy. A friend of yours might show up out of the blue and say, hey, I got an extra ticket to Italy. My wife and I just got divorced. You want to come with me? That could happen. So you don't need the 10 grand to get to Italy. You just need the opening to take. And it's like everybody fixates on the how to get there versus getting there. And so don't worry about what car or what mode of travel you're taking to get somewhere. Just focus on the end goal. Focus on the goal that you want. And then that's what you need to fixate on. So that's what usually comes to you. When people just focus on the money, like a lot of people are like, oh, I need more money. They don't put in an amount. And so then they find $1 on the ground. Well, you got more money. It's $1.
Yeah.
But you still got it, or a quarter or a penny. You know, it's focus on what it is you truly want at the end of the day. And that's what should all that matters. And don't get stuck in the bliss trap of, oh, everything's love and light, and that's the only way to do it. If my heart's filled with love, oh, you'll get everything you want. You have to take action. You have to do things too.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. This is very appropriate too. Very recently, I joined a new intuitive development group, and a lot of these types of discussions came up. And it's all very aligned with what you're saying. Couple of examples I want to bring up briefly is that I'd heard this story on another podcast years ago, and like these are all examples of be careful for what you wish for because you might get it. There was a woman who allegedly asked to live with more of an open heart, but she didn't specify, didn't put a cap on it, and then she had a major heart attack that led to open heart surgery after that intention. And like that might be an extreme example, but it's not inaccurate, I don't think. And
Yeah.
Also here, I'm not trying to preach. I'm not trying to say things one way or another, but I have a very good friend of mine. He used to practice a lot of this sigil magic. Like you said, he had a podcast about it, which he since closed down. Last time he guested on the show about like a year and a half ago, he told me that he kind of put the magic aside, and he's not overly religious or anything, but he started to up his prayer game. And he swears his quality of life greatly improved when he substituted prayer with the magic. And for those that resonates with, fine, or those who don't, just take it and leave. It's just, this is what I was told. And I think it's a reflection of what we've been discussing here.
Yeah, and you can kind of look at it a couple of different ways. I mean, to some point, doing a sigil is almost a sense of prayer, right? Because you're asking for something. You're putting your intention out into the universe. You're just doing it in a form of a picture with a process versus just asking. And that's what happens a lot of times too, is going back to be careful what you ask for, is a lot of times people make these contracts with entities without realizing it because they're in a bad situation and I'll just do anything if you just help me.
Yeah.
And then something's like, okay, I'm going to help you out of this. And now I'm going to stay on you and make your life worse in the long run. That happens all the time. And same thing with curses. Like we curse ourselves more than anyone ever curses us. I'm too fat. I'm too ugly. I'm too dumb. I'm too this. I'm too that. And when we repeat these things over and over, we're just cursing ourselves. We're making this stuff come into reality.
100%. When you talk about, making contracts with entities and all that, there's a very popular, I guess, kind of, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but there's a popular archetype about selling your soul to the devil or to like a dark entity or whatever. Many will say, the soul cannot be bought and sold. It can never leave you. However, and I know you've definitely experienced this, I have to a certain degree, there probably isn't a human on earth that hasn't experienced some type of trauma that has led to soul loss. And a big part of shamanic work is doing and performing soul retrieval to get those lost pieces back. So do you believe at all that the soul can be completely sold to like an outside entity, or is it just fragments of soul lost that end up getting entangled with said entity?
I've never seen a full soul be, sold or bought in that way. I have seen entities. It's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing for some of these. So it's when we have trauma, perceived or otherwise, we can have soul loss from that trauma. And perceived or otherwise could be even, you almost get into a car accident, right? But it doesn't happen. But some part of you leaves because it wants to protect itself just in case something happens. Usually those parts come back. When you have more severe trauma, usually a good essence of your soul will take off and hide. And it might be gone for lifetimes because it hasn't come back and you haven't worked on it. And that usually can show up in the form of somebody having like anxiety or depression and having no real reason for it. I've even dealt with people with allergies. They had a soul loss problem and it caused them to have an allergy to this certain hay in this area. And so that stuff can happen. And then when that soul loss happens, it opens up your field. And so things can now come in to feed off of that trauma some more.
Mm-hmm.
Now those things can come into your field, and while they're feeding on you can cause other issues, which could also cause more soul loss. Most entities that I've ran into don't necessarily have contracts per se. They're more like parasites.
Right.
They find an opening, they come in and they feed. Some things like the jinn, they're more contract based. They don't just come in on a whim. They come in to do a job that you've made a contract with, whether you did or somebody else did with them to cause it onto you. But I've never seen somebody have their whole soul taken. I have dealt with soul retrievals where an entity or a contract was attached to it that needed to be broken. And so in those regards, yes. And I've seen that on generational lines too. When you're trying to work on trauma from ancestral work, there might be an entity or like a sorcerer spirit that's causing havoc that put a curse on them, which is going down the family line. That can happen. But I mean, anything's possible, but I've never seen someone physically sell the entire soul.
I'm not totally convinced it's possible. Like, I think a lot of that archetype is not accurate, but parts of it are very accurate, and it's something that needs a little bit further explanation. And people who outside of the shamanic realm in this type of work, I don't know if they would fully grasp that or not. So I'm glad that you were able to clear that up for us. One thing I wanted to ask you right now, Jeremy, is you talked about doing ayahuasca, which is psychedelic I have never done, by the way. That shatters a lot of stereotypes to people's minds out there. I wanted to know firsthand, were you in South America or outside of North America when you did it, or did you find a way to get that going closer to home?
I was here in Washington State.
Okay.
I'm literally 20 minutes from my house.
Just because here's so many stories of people who take pilgrimages to the Amazon or Peru, Machu Picchu, or wherever. And unfortunately, that area has become a cottage industry of psychedelic scammers. And some really bad stuff could go on down there. So, I mean, you always want to take warning and vet out who you are taking these from if you were even called to do them in the first place, correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, it definitely. It's set and setting. You want to make sure your facilitator knows what they're doing and has been trained. Mine actually does a pilgrimage down to Peru once a year to continue her training with the Shipibo tribe personally. She gets the medicine from them personally. Everything she does is in that closed container, made from that space. Like the tapestry behind me was actually made by hand from her teacher's granddaughter.
Wow.
And they made it, and the colors and stuff are used from the dyes from the plants and everything down in Peru. So there's a lot of scammers here in the States. There's a lot of scammers in Costa Rica. If you're going to a resort to do ayahuasca, you're going to the wrong spot.
Yeah.
Like if you're going anywhere that has like 30, 40 people with one facilitator, you're going to the wrong spot. All of my ceremonies have been with my one. She's a friend now. I would consider her a close friend. Like I would even have my children take the medicine with her when they're old enough and ready. But she knows what she's doing. Same with her husband. They have been trained and they continue to get their training. You need to make sure a facilitator is asking you what medication you're on, what health problems you have, what mental problems you might have. The medicine is not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And if you're taking certain medications or you're still drinking or anything, recreational drugs, before you take it, it can really mess you up and you'll have a very, very bad day. If you still, I've never heard of anyone dying from it, but I've heard of people getting really messed up from it.
Yeah, it can cause its own form of psychological trauma that may not go away if it's bad enough. You know what I mean? So,
exactly.
I'll just be straight with you here, Jeremy. I have no desire to do LSD. Saw too many friends in high school.
Never done that either.
Well, I saw too many friends in high school freak out on that stuff, and I'm like, no way. No desire to do ketamine, which is apparently really popular. There's a whole line of stuff. I'm on the fence with things, like Cambo and DMT and even ayahuasca. And I have access to all of those things if I want them, practically in my backyard. I'd like to know your thoughts on this. I've done my share of mushroom ceremonies and they've all been very beneficial for me. I don't know how much longer I'm going to partake. I feel that door is closer to the end than the beginning. But I've had all these nudges to get into ayahuasca and how beneficial it's going to be for me. However, my body gives out a strong no. And in response to that, at times, I get told something along the lines of like, well, that's just your ego resisting. But I said, no, I feel it deep in my body. So is that a good no for me or anybody else who might be in that same predicament?
I mean, if you feel it's a no, then it would be a no, right? It's not something I recommend anyone take lightly at all. I've done the medicine about 20 times now over the years. I'm even at the point now where I haven't gone in a couple of years because I just don't feel the call for it. Like I don't feel the need. It's something you need to make sure you're ready for. You need to make sure you have a good facilitator that knows what they're doing, that can help you in case you get stuck. Like they might have to do some energy clearing on you. Yeah. You might have an entity attached to you. They need to know how to deal with that. They need to know how to keep the space closed and contained, because when you take this medicine, you become more open. And so if the space isn't in lockdown and gridded up and protected, things can come into that, and you don't want that happening either. So now you're leaving the ceremony with more problems than what you started with. And it's not to scare anybody, it's just being honest, right? It's ayahuasca, like mushrooms. So for me personally, I've only done mushrooms and ayahuasca. Mm-hmm. They're very different. Right. The best description that was ever given to me when I was trying to work with the mushrooms was that mushrooms are kind of like a faithful dog, and they want to give you what you ask for, but you need to know what you want.
Yeah, 100%. For sure.
And if you don't know what you want, it can just cause chaos in your visions and your mind. And now you're down for the count, and you're just seeing all this randomness.
And I just wanted to say real quick, I've experienced both types of trips like that, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it lasts longer. So mushrooms have that build up, then you get to the peak, and depending on how much you're doing, a normal ceremonial dose is about 3.5 grams. They say a God dose is, 5.
Yeah.
If you've never done them before, I wouldn't go higher than that.
No, definitely not.
Especially depending on the strain you get. But you'll be down for about an hour or two. Your eyes will be closed. Now, the difference is with mushrooms, you can open your eyes. You could try to walk around. You can sober up easier. Mm-hmm. But it also lasts longer coming down. Versus ayahuasca, you take the medicine, tastes very nasty. You go down, and you can be in a whole nother realm of existence for about 3 to 4 hours, and then you just wake up and you're done.
Yeah, I've heard that. You're in and then you're out. Like it just pulls you in and you're not fighting it at all.
And there's different trips to it too. So you might get just a physical sensation when you're doing ayahuasca, and you might just be shaking, and you might just be getting uncomfortable and trying to figure out the best way to be. And your body could be just moving things around and getting rid of energy that's stuck and helping you get free. You might get visuals where you might, like I said, I was in this cavern and saw the map, and I saw this and I saw that. You could see that. You could also just fall asleep and feel like you got nothing out of it, but a lot of stuff is still going on internally. So and I've had all of those. I've had ones where I've laid there the entire night going, nothing is happening. What the hell is going on? But it was me needing to release and give in. And then once I did that, it was like, I was fully in.
Yeah.
Versus mushrooms, it just builds and builds and builds. Then you're in. And then unless you're going to eat a bunch of stuff, you're just going to be kind of in that state for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And my average ceremonies have been around like the 6-hour mark, give or take. Yeah. And I find that's enough for myself. So, I mean, whenever I bring this topic up on the pod, tread lightly, listen to your body, listen to your intuition, and do all the discernment you can. Like, this is not to be taken lightly, like you just said, at all.
No, and listen, and I would say the same thing with mushrooms too. I've seen really bad mushroom facilitators. Like, make sure they know what they're doing. Make sure you've talked to people who have worked with them. Again, they should be asking you, what do you want to work on? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What medications are you on? All of these things matter. Like if you're on SSRIs, that's going to impact you when you're trying to take ayahuasca or even mushrooms. If you're drinking all the way up to the day of an ayahuasca ceremony, you're not going to have any fun. It's going to be a very bad night for you and everybody else.
Yeah.
You need to do a dieta before you take ayahuasca where you're It's almost like a pure vegetarian diet with a little bit of chicken and fish. And each culture kind of has their own version of this, but it's usually no spicy foods, no salt, no alcohol, no sex of any kind, no red meat, no milk products. And it's just like really just more of a vegetarian style meal for 2 weeks before you go into ceremony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a bad way to go at all. One other aspect of this I'd like your thoughts on before we move forward is between this and sound baths, breath work. I've, in the last couple of years, gotten into shamanic breath work with a certain practitioner who's become a very good friend of the show with multiple appearances and a close confidant of mine. One day, this is on the full moon at the end of September of 2023, I was at a sound bath being facilitated by a very good friend of mine. And I got like this nudge to say, treat this like an upper world shamanic journey. And I was like, okay. I'd been to some sound baths before, but I'm like, I've never tried this before. And when I went into the trance and did that in my own way, it's like I jumped timelines and I got answers on so many loose pieces on my journey that it was almost overwhelming. And I've been at a point since then where when I've gone under these modalities, and this is psychedelic uses included, that I'm getting glimpses from a future timeline or possible future timelines that I need to know right now, like in pieces. So whether it's with yourself, fellow practitioners, or clients, do you find with some of these modalities, you can jump timelines to get information to kind of get you on the right path or your highest path?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even the shamanic work from the Cuero that I learned in Peru with the Cuero tribe, it's when we get through the medicine wheel, we get to the east, which is like the final direction. And that's all about the eagle and picking our destiny and our path. And it's finding where on the momentum tunnel, which timeline do we want to access? How do we want to get there? Because we all kind of already have a set timeline in motion. And so like a lot of people with, cancers and other diseases, we can change that by trying to find that timeline where it doesn't happen. Maybe it's only a 4% out of 100 where this one timeline, you don't have cancer. So it's like, what's going on in that timeline? What's different, right? Maybe you're not under so much stress. Maybe you're just selling shoes at Walmart and that makes you happy because you're being left alone and it's the best job you ever had for you. It's what is the different about that timeline that you're not doing today?
Yeah. And when it comes to getting access to these timelines, do you surrender and let it effortlessly flow towards you? Or do you take a similar approach like we talked about earlier with manifestation, where you put the intention in what you get with the work in order to align with it? Or is it both? Because everybody's path's got to be different, right?
I would say both. It depends on what I'm trying to do. So again, if I'm trying to work with someone who's got like a disease that we need to work on, I'm specifically looking for what's different. Sometimes I'll do journeys where I'll just meet the multi-dimensional versions of myself and be like, what did you do differently that I didn't do? How is your life now versus my life? And we'll just kind of talk around the fire with like 3 different versions of myself going, what did you do differently at this point? It's those kind of things can work too. Other times it's really just being open to what comes and surrendering. Like my podcast, I never wanted to start a podcast. That was never part of my plan.
Okay.
But I all of a sudden had a download. I'm in the bathroom taking a shower and it was like, woof, here's your logo. Here's the podcast name. Here's what it's about. And here's some people you're going to talk to. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Here's the logo. Here's the podcast.
I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse or not, but like I'm a baseball guy. So growing up, I watched the movie Field of Dreams quite a bit. And what you just said, that's like the main character in Field of Dreams. He gets like the auditory downloads to build a baseball field in his cornfield. And he's like, I'm not doing that. I can't afford that. Then he does it, almost puts his family and his land into bankruptcy, but yet it pays off for him. It fulfills his purpose. It's no different.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it happened was I've been doing it now for like a year and a half, and it just keeps, I'm not in huge numbers, but it's growing. And I was invited to talk at an expo about shamanism and PTSD. I was talking at another expo about ancestral burdens. It was like, let's just talk, see where we take it. I've learned other modalities where it's like, oh, this is interesting. How do you do this? Show me how. Let's work together on this, those kind of things. It opened up doorways that I wasn't expecting or even thinking about.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that from my own story real quick. I'm not going to go too in depth on this because a lot of this is going to come out in a whole other podcast one day when the time is right and when certain things have happened. But you probably know this, Jeremy. It can be a real mind fuck sometimes when you get these downloads or these breadcrumbs and they don't make any sense. But then when you align, they pop up in the most unexpected ways. And this has been going on with me for a long time. But just a quick snippet to back up what we've been talking about here. When I first started journeying in 2019 and into 2020, I kept seeing visions of a specific house. And I was in there with somebody I knew, and I'm like, it got to the point where it was so frequent. I'm like, okay, something's here. It's no accident. I don't know what this is. Fast forward to August 2022, I accidentally find the house in the physical world. And it gets even weirder from there. In early 2024, I have a conversation with a dear friend, an afternoon tea with her in a business meeting. And I'm telling her the beginning of this story. And as we're about to leave, she's like, is that house beside an old church? And I said, yeah. And she goes, I know someone in that house who works out of there. And I'm just like, sit down. You're not going anywhere. And anyway, I'm going to leave it there because there's so much more in development from that. But this is a breadcrumb that came to me almost 7 years ago now, and it's still playing out. But part of me just has to surrender and align without trying to force it,
And it's funny you mentioned the house thing too, because same thing in 2019. I mean, it was, I want to say about April, May of 2019. All of a sudden it was like, you need to move. You need to move now. You need to get more property and you need to be more isolated from people. And I'm like, all right, and I'm telling my wife, I was like, we need to move. I don't know why. We need to move. We need to find another place. We weren't really happy where we were at anyway, but it was just this intense urge of we need to move. And so that summer we started looking around, found a house that was literally 10 minutes away from my other house. And it's got 8 acres. There's 50 acres of untouched land across my driveway. There's only 4 people on our street. I have this big 60-foot shop that's been converted. That's now my office and everything. And then we get in by September of 19, and then COVID happened later that, 6 months later, basically. Yeah. And it was like, oh, that's why we needed to move. Because in my job, I work in IT. So it was like, oh, now you can stay home and work. Cool. Now I can open my practice because I can work around that. I don't have to drive 2 hours a day back and forth. It was the same thing. My wife, even now, she was like, yeah, you were so intense. You just wanted to move and you couldn't give me a reason. I don't know.
Wow. Yeah. You can't make this stuff up. It's really incredible. So Jeremy, in our time left here, we got a little bit of time to play with, but we could go on another couple hours, but I got to be up early for work and all this. And I try not to get carried away with the length of my episodes anymore like I used to. So I want to get to more about the stone people and more about your specific work with PTSD, but I think this is a good intersection to talk about spirit animals, power animals, and if you could share some of your experiences with them. Mine just started to amplify, even before I discovered shamanism. It was around 2018, 19 from what I can remember, even though I don't consciously remember it, it just showed up one day. And one quick example I'll give is that, and once again, this is a story tied to something to come out publicly later on, but in June of 2023, not a physical owl, but the owl totem started following me around, and it still is to this day. And I've just figured out, I think, why it has been doing so. And I've also encountered it in some psychedelic ceremonies and stuff. And I'll just say this without getting fully into it. Like, for a long time, I fell in love with shamanism so much. I thought it was my main path, but it's actually the piece of a larger puzzle. And this owl is pushing me towards that larger puzzle, because I don't think it's supposed to be the centerpiece of what I do, like say it is with yourself. So that's one of like hours of stories I could get into, but I won't. So what can you say about power animals, spirit animals, and how some of them have changed the course of your journey or aided it?
Yeah. And I get to explain what that is like, so everybody has basically what we call a power animal. It's basically, if you look at like the tree roots of like each species of animal, so you'll have like the cat, you'll have dog, you'll have monkey, you'll have like giraffe, etc., etc. And so it'll be the representation of all of that species. And it's not going to be a domesticated animal.
No.
It's not going to be your husky or a chihuahua. It's going to be a wolf. It's not going to be your house cat. They still might show up for you and like as a guide, but they're not your power animal.
Yeah.
So like for me, my main power animal is a kabuki monkey. But I work with other animals depending on what I need, but you usually have one, maybe two main ones that you work with on a constant basis. And they're there to basically help you see what it is that you need to know about yourself. Maybe it's something you need to add to your life. So like for me, the monkey was adding more playfulness, more family, telling me at that time that, hey, dipshit, you're stuck in your head. You're not taking care of yourself. You're ignoring your family. You need to do more stuff with them. It's all about like maintaining that. When I go down and I'm doing entity extractions, for me, Wolf shows up, and Wolf is actually protecting me while I'm clearing out things out of people's lower world. And so, but that's Wolf's primary job. That's what he's there for. He just showed up one day when I was doing some extraction work, and he's been with me ever since.
Yeah.
But I don't see him like Monkey doesn't go down with me when I do extractions. Monkey's just kind of hanging out when I'm doing my own journey work. And so we each have one main one. You might have another main one, but they're just there to teach you things. Like a wolf, for example, there is no lone wolf. Everyone has that misconception. Wolves run in packs. Wolves are about family as well and protection. That's what they do. An owl is usually about, seeing in the dark, seeing things that aren't there, having that sixth sense kind of perception. And so it's just there to help give you those gifts and help you understand a little bit more about maybe what you're missing, what you need to do. When I do like power animal retrievals for people, I'll even have them talk to their power animal to see, what teachings do they bring? What gifts do they bring? Is there anything else they need to know? And they'll usually get a lot of good insights from that.
My main animal, however you want to brand it this whole time, has been the mourning dove. And they have come so close to me at times that like I could pet them or I could give them a nudge with my foot if I want to. I've never done that. But I find whenever I see them, whether it's close by or driving by on the road, if I see one walking around on the ground, that means pay attention. This is a big deal. Something's coming your way, and it never fails. I know an ayahuasca shaman in New York who I've had on the show a couple of times, and we were having this discussion, and he said something along the lines of, that dove is appearing for you because it knows something you don't. And like it's giving you a heads up, and here you are saying, oh, it's teaching you something. And yeah, it's really incredible. Like, yeah, some people work with one or two. I'm up to like 7 right now. Like it just keeps adding on and it keeps evolving, but I'm at a level of awareness that I know when it's here, even if it's a new animal. Do you have any experiences of animals you worked with in the non-physical, but yet appear in the physical in very unusual circumstances? I mean, I've had that happen before.
I mean, all the time. Like when I was first starting down this path, I was working on building my mesa. And in my mesa, we needed to use a large feather to help clear the body. And I have a small hobby farm. I have chickens. I had some turkeys at the time. And I'm like, I guess that's all I have. It'd be really cool if I could have an eagle feather. And, I've journeyed with the eagle. I became the eagle. I've flown with the eagle. Like I said, the eagle's in our east direction as well. And part of that archetype of the eagle was put into one of my chakras as well as during our initiation. And one morning I wake up and I hear one of my ducks in the overflow pond that we have when it rains too much, just freaking out. And I'm like, what is going on? And I open the front door and I look out, and on two of the fence posts, literally two eagles, one on each one, were just hanging out there, looking down at my little ducks swimming back and forth, freaking out. So I walk out there and the eagles just kind of look at me, then they fly away. Well, they each left me a feather.
Oh.
Just literally right where they were. There was like perfectly feathers. They weren't broken off or anything. Like it's one of those, like you could even like write as a quill if I wanted to. It's got the tip on the point. And it was just there for me. And I'm like, oh, cool. I guess this is what I'm using now.
Quick story to share before we move on. So I've told you we're in a heat wave right now. And then early in the evening, skies went dark. There were crazy thunderstorm warnings going on all over the place. Somehow it dodged us. It like went around us. And not too long after that, I'm eating dinner with my daughter and we look out the window and there's this like white hawk with this huge wingspan just circling like outside our building and going in and out of my periphery. And I'm just like, well, that's unusual. And I've been getting a lot of hawk help and hawk imagery lately. And I'm like, this is no accident, but like the wingspan of this was overwhelming. And I hadn't seen one that light colored before. And I just thought, oh, this is tipping me off about our conversation tonight. It has to be, right?
Yeah. And these things happen. And like I said, sometimes those power animals will come in and out. The important thing is don't get hung up on what it is. I see that a lot with people. Like you mentioned, you had a dove. Doves are cool. There's nothing, it has a message specific for you.
Yep.
Everybody wants the big panther or the lion or, the wolf.
Jaguar.
Yeah, or the bear. Those have their places, but a hummingbird can teach you just as much as the jaguar can.
Yes.
The dove can teach you. The little newt can teach you. Like it doesn't matter what the animal is. It's there for a reason, for something you need.
Yeah, because that attaches to ego, and then that's just not going to work right there. So you mentioned earlier about the stone people and our devices being made of minerals, and that just kind of flipped a light switch off in my head because, every element we deal with here in this realm has consciousness to it. And I don't remember if this came up in any of my trainings or not, but when you talked about rocks and minerals, it was just like, how did I not clue into this before? But it totally makes sense. So could you go just a little bit deeper in that?
Yeah. So it's, again, in this work, we believe the animal kingdom has things to teach us. The plant kingdom has things to teach us. But the stone people, they're the oldest around. They've been here the longest. They don't move necessarily unless we make them move. They see the most things. They've been around way before plants were, way before the animals were. They're here the longest. But it's hard for us to work with them for the most part, right? We all know, like, oh, if I get a quartz crystal, it might help do this clearing. If I do a rose quartz crystal, it's good for the heart, those kind of things. But a standard stone can still teach you a lot. There's a lot there. You look at the pebbles on a beach, they've been worn down by the water, and they've been there for thousands, if not millions of years. And so everything we have is made of minerals. And so I do believe, and I didn't come up with this on my own. I think I've had a couple other teachers who have kind of pieced things together too, but it's, why wouldn't they use our technology that they're made of to some degree in order to talk to us? Mm-hmm. Because we can't talk to them normally. I don't know if you've ever tried to journey to become a stone. It's very frustrating.
No, I haven't actually.
I've tried it. It's very hard to do because that really has to get out of the mind even more because you're not moving.
And their frequency is probably too dense for us to connect to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to journey. I've become a plant, I've become a tree, I've become an animal. All of those are really easy, but the stone is so hard to communicate with. And so why wouldn't, our computers are made of quartz and gold and silver and lithium, all sorts of other stuff these days. Like, why wouldn't they be able to find a way to actually communicate with us? And I'm not saying AI is the stone people, but there might be something there that they're, getting into our Facebook feeds and giving us things that are going against the algorithm, like you mentioned earlier.
See, this opens up so much for as much control as the elites or the dark controllers, whatever you want to call them, have over things. I always believe there's a counterbalance of that, of the light, like for everything. And I think you're just proving that right now. And I think more people need to embody this and get it in their heads and hearts a bit more.
Oh yeah. Look at technology in general. It can be used to enslave us, but at the same time, we're also using it to communicate with each other and to teach people and to spread messages way more than we ever could even 50 years ago. Like, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 46 and I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 18 or 19. Yeah. You wanted to communicate, you had to use the payphone. Now it's like, oh, what do I want to order straight to my house at any given moment? Like we have so much more ability now. Like I said, I trained with the guy in South Africa from my home. I work with people all over the world from my home, and it works just as well, if not better, online because the other person is comfortable. They are at their house. They aren't stressing about traveling and driving. They're in their home and they're just chilling in their bed or their couch.
Mm-hmm. And I turned 44 at the end of the summer, so I relate to what you're saying there quite a bit. Yeah, there's a lot more we could get into there, but I think before we wrap, I want to get into some of the specific work you're doing with PTSD. This has been such a chaotic problem for so long, especially in the United States and all the things they have their hands into and all that. And also, I'm being reminded of a story how a little while back, earlier this year, there's a former NFL player, Robert Gallery, who was having all these CTE symptoms and having, I think, similar symptoms to a degree to what you described earlier about lashing out at your family and just having this uncontrollable rage. And he finally sought out, I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but ibogaine, that plant. And then there was legislation, I believe, to help make that more accessible to people who need it. And
the research, now they're not letting, it's not available where we can just go down to the street and pick it up somewhere, which everyone seems to think it is. But if you actually read it, it's really, they're just allowing more research to be done before anything happens. It's a start, but it's nowhere near being legal like people think it is.
It's still tangled in a lot of red tape and such. Yeah, okay. Well, that's great that you brought that up. And I brought that up because it looks to me, even though it's progressing slowly, it's a step in the right direction for PTSD. But I have a feeling, Jeremy, what you're doing can probably accelerate that process without all the red tape. So how are you helping those suffering with the symptoms you suffered or similar to it?
Yeah, and so let's talk about what PTSD really is first. It's the symptoms from a trauma. And again, perceived or otherwise. PTSD is the symptoms of something that happened. And it's not even really about what happened. It's the story that you created around what happened. And then that causes the PTSD, the trauma lingering, all that good stuff. It's now and we see this in other forms too, so it's not even in combat. It's take someone who was raped, right? They're raped, maybe they're a young girl, and now they choose to always wear like baggy pants, they'll gain weight, or baggy clothes in general. They try to make themselves look ugly because they don't want that attention, because their story is they were too attractive, and this is why someone did this to me, subconsciously or consciously. What my work does, and when we have that trauma, we get imprints within our energetic field. And so I don't consider myself actually a healer. I did a video on this where it's like, I don't even like using that term because I'm not healing anybody. What I'm doing is I'm removing these energetic blocks, whether they're an entity or imprints left behind from trauma, and I'm just taking them out of the equation and allowing your own energy to come in now and to retake that place and give you a reset, basically. So that way, when something similar happens, that imprint's no longer there. Now you get to choose, how am I going to react to this situation? We're resetting that story. We're rewiring the code, if you will. You know, we can look at it where, I mean, we're all just energy. We're energy hanging out in this meat suit. Everything that we brought with us into this life was programming that is here and causing the way we act today. So even past life stuff that we never resolved comes with us. It's all part of the trauma that we brought. And it's just that programming. So my job is really just to go in, clear out the imprints, help you rewrite that code, let you just start fresh. Like I said, fixing someone's spine with energy shouldn't be possible, right? But we're all energy, so it makes perfect sense. I'm just rewriting the code. I'm just changing the way the code is designed, putting in, like a software developer, just putting in the right dashes, the right commas, taking some bad parts out, putting some bad parts in, and just allowing you to reset. And it sounds simple when I say it this way, and I'm sorry it is, but it really is that simple. And it took me years to figure that out, is that it really is that simple. And yeah, I still have my moments. I still have something that might come up and trigger me. But then I get to look at it and go, oh, we're doing this again. Let me clear this out. Let me work on that. It's just, it's really hard to say it any other way than that. It's really just rewriting your story, clearing out the imprints, and allowing you to just have that reset and live the life that you've always wanted to live. Like, that's really what it's about. And it could be over anything. It doesn't have to be severe trauma. You don't have to be shot at. Like, I was never shot at, but people in front of my convoys were. People around me, we dealt with IEDs and stuff like that. So I came back thinking, well, I didn't shoot anybody. Nobody shot at me. I'm fine. Well, stuff happens.
Trauma is trauma, no matter how you unpack it. And that's something else we need to dig in and understand a little bit deeper. And very recently, I've had some stuff come up, but then I was able to sit with it, feel it, embody it. And then literally within days, it was gone. And the thing that got me riled up in the first place just kind of like fixed itself. I didn't have to do anything. And it's not easy.
You didn't react to it. Like,
exactly. It's not easy to get to that point, but it is doable. So that's and with that, the biggest thing I'd say for anybody is work on your nervous system.
Yeah,
because
that's the important step. First thing I
am doing right now. Yep.
I go into box breathing. We talked about breath work earlier. Box breathing is the simplest thing for people to do. It's breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, and just do it over and over a couple minutes every day. Regulates the nervous system. Going to the chiropractor can regulate your nervous system. Mm-hmm. Acupuncture can regulate your nervous system. If you do that and then turn off all the distractions, turn off the 24-hour news, the social media, stop yelling at people you don't know and are never going to meet, like stop engaging in trolls, just it's a crazy time right now. Unfortunately, that's what we have to go through. Just one thing there's a guy named Gordon White who is the podcaster for Rune Soup. He recently passed away. Mm-hmm. One of the things he always said that resonated with me is do what is yours to do. Mm-hmm. Do what is yours. Yours is not to deal with Ukraine or Iran or anywhere else in the world. If you're here in the States and you have no ability to change it, you can be upset about it, but yelling and screaming at your neighbors about it isn't going to save anything. Mm-hmm. Working with your neighbors, seeing what they need, what are they going through? Maybe they can help you. How many people listening even know who their neighbors' names are? Yeah. Like a lot of people don't, and they live 10 feet away from each other because they're in the suburbs or they're in the city somewhere. Like, meet your neighbors, learn who they are. You don't have to like them, but at least know their names.
Yeah, for sure. Major problem in the cities for sure. Jeremy, this has been awesome. Like to do it again with you one day.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
anytime.
Got lots more to get into, I know for sure, but this feels good for one sitting. Do you have any parting messages, and where can people connect with your work and your podcast as well?
Yep. Like you mentioned, my podcast is the Shaman Stories podcast. I interview people who have gone on the journey as well. That's really the whole focus of it, is just talk to people who started their journey. What modalities do they use? See what resonates with you. Like, my work might not resonate with you, and that's okay. Find something that does. Maybe it's Reiki, maybe it's QHHT, maybe it's quantum touch healing, or any other thing that is out there. There's so many things. I'm a firm believer that it's all the same energy. We're just approaching it in a different way.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Find someone to work with and get the help you need. If you want to work with me, like I said, pnwshamanichealing.com. So Pacific Northwest Shamanic Healing. Send me an email. You can reach out on the website. I got a chat bot as well. I do a free 15-minute discovery call. See if I can even help you with your problem. Make sure we're a good fit both ways, because like we mentioned, make sure the facilitator is there to work for you. You just got to know. I work with a lot of veterans, people who have gone through trauma, but I do other things too, ancestral grief. If you have a loved one that's passed away, I do death rites, soul retrieval work, regular clearing work. Like I mentioned earlier, I've fixed a back, like all sorts of random stuff, entity work. If I can't help you, I'll point you in a direction of someone who can. Again, I don't do plant medicine ceremonies for people. I do know some people who can, but you got to get vetted first. I don't just give out that information.
Yeah, good call. Thank you again, Jeremy. And we will do this again when everything aligns. And I just want to say, next week on the show, stay tuned to the Unexplained Incorporated socials, as the July lineup and even part of the August lineup is coming up really nicely. So when that gets all posted, I will let you know what is coming up, but it'll be another great discussion and very likely a completely different perspective than what we shared tonight. This is what I love about doing the show. So with that being said, stay strong, stay healthy, and of course, stay curious, because if you ain't curious, you may as well already be dead. And yeah, just stay open, because you never know where that path's going to take you. And this is Phantom Phil signing off.